And we're live.
Hello, audience, viewer friends on YouTube or Facebook. Here we are.
Sit back and relax. There's not much to talk about. Oh, man.
Sit back and relax for another 45 seconds before we blow you out of your chair and ourselves.
I know. And we appreciate your tuning in for this because we know it's a lot to absorb, but it's necessary.
And thank God you get to see it in the middle of the afternoon. Think about people who are watching it at 11 o'clock at night.
Well, as I told you, an ex-husband who wouldn't watch it because he couldn't go to bed listening to that kind of stuff. But a lot of people tape it these days and watch it at your convenience.
Or watch it online at our website. You can do that anytime, gayusatv.org. But meanwhile, listen in.
And we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrop, and in honor of ACT UP's upcoming anniversary demonstration this weekend, I'm wearing my Silence Equals Death pin.
I'll be there. You'll be there. We'll tell you more about it later.
It's going to be 80 degrees in New York.
Oh, my goodness.
38 years of ACT UP.
All right. And March 31st is the Trans Day of Visibility. And this week we had another victory in court for trans troops.
But more threats from the Department of Defense. The relentless Trump revenge tour intensifies, closing the Department of Ed, massive cuts to LGBTQ health grants, defunding universities over trans issues, extorting money from private law firms that offended him, and demanding the governor of Maine apologize to him or see her state lose all federal funds.
And the State Department dumps women and LGBTQ people from its annual report on human rights around the world and wants to deport any non-citizen here who participates in a demonstration. You heard that correctly.
Are you depressed yet? Rise and Resist is hitting back at investigations by the Department of Justice and the FBI into their anti-Tesla protests.
We'll bring you video about that, and we think it's very encouraging. And this is encouraging. South Carolina's women's basketball coach said no to $10 million from Elon Musk.
Dawn Staley is a hero. Texas takes book banning and other anti-LGBTQ initiatives to a whole new level. And you saw Governor Abbott's latest little lie. Little, big.
But we'll show you the resistance there too.
Yeah.
Disney shareholders voted almost unanimously to keep participating in the Human Rights Campaign Fund's Corporate Equality Index.
An appeals court, who we usually count on for help, sided with Idaho in banning trans students from restrooms aligned with their gender identities.
Depressing.
Terrible.
The killer of the lesbian fire chief in California there was captured in Mexico. It's her wife.
Yeah, we knew that. Calls for LGBTQ people to boycott World Pride in June in Washington, D.C., because the USA is no longer a free democratic country.
And I'll give you my review of Operation Mincemeat on Broadway, a little break from all this horrible stuff.
So we're going to run through all the LGBTQ related and other news, but I feel we would be remiss if we didn't mention some of the big stories.
Well, I just want to say that the ascent of Trump at this point means that we have now lost the Civil War as he embraces the racism of the Confederacy. We have now lost World War II as he gets us out of NATO. We have lost the Cold War as we take Putin's side in the Ukraine war. And now, wait for it, we're surrendering in the Revolutionary War as he greenlights becoming a member state of the British Commonwealth. So all those brave American patriots have died in vain.
250 years. And what I'm focused on at the moment is that now he's got Mike Johnson in the House threatening to defund federal district courts because they're issuing decisions that go against what Trump wants. He's just going to wipe them out.
And of course, we need to expand the courts, given the way the population has risen. And of course, in some of these states where he's talking about getting rid of them, they're saying, we're already overwhelmed here. We need a federal judiciary.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? To so overwhelm them that they can't do anything. And then they want to give all of the states' voting rolls, a list of every single voter in the United States, to Elon Musk. So he can, root out fraud?
And transgender people.
And
Trump also wants a list from universities of all non-citizens who participated in demonstrations, which is a prelude to deporting them. Although that student at Columbia challenged this in a lawsuit, Yun-Seo Chung, and the judge said, "You're not a foreign policy risk. They can't do this to you."
Well, luckily that court was still in business and could make that decision. Check your timing. But of course, the coup de grace this week is the destruction of Social Security. They've been threatening it. We've been afraid of it. We didn't really believe it could happen. But yes, they are breaking down Social Security.
Closing all these offices. You can't get them on the phone. You got to go into an office, then they don't exist. People are showing up having to go 2 hours away and
Wait for hours
and not get in to see anybody.
Yeah.
This is nuts. I did it, on the computer. I think they say you can still do it on the computer, but then they call you and say, "No, you have to do this in person." I mean, that's going to start happening to all of us, and we're geezers, and we're worried about our benefits.
Look, do they not understand what they're doing, or are they really out to destroy the country?
Project 2025 says destroy Social Security, destroy Medicare, and destroy Medicaid. And this is the blueprint.
But why?
This is a man who, as I said at the top of the show, hates this country.
Yes.
It's a revenge tour.
Yes, and he says it every day in all sorts of ways.
And I don't know what to say other
Directly.
than he has destroyed the United States of America. There is no constitution anymore that is respected by the executive. You need a new nation at that point. I don't know what we're waiting for.
And we also keep thinking he's going to appoint someone that is going to stop this. But every single person who takes a job with him is only there to do what he says.
Right. And then J.D. Vance tells Greenland, which Trump wants to annex, that the U.S., we're going to protect your security. Don't trust him. We're abandoning everybody else. Why would we protect you?
I was in the elevator in my building the other day, and there were some people there with suitcases, and they volunteered, "We're from Greenland." And I said, "Oh, please, don't let him take your country.
And?
Hold on to it." And they just said, "Okay, yeah, okay."
There are only 56,000 of them. Trump signed an executive order requiring everyone to prove citizenship in order to vote, and no counting of votes after Election Day, including absentee ballots. The ACLU, of course.
From the military, of course, because they're the ones who vote absentee from their places around the world.
You got some more bad news?
No, we can go into our regular list.
So some good news, all right? We'd like to start with good news, but we got to fill you in. So a New Jersey federal district court granted a temporary restraining order to keep Staff Sergeant Nicholas Bear Bade and Master Sergeant Logan Ireland, transgender soldiers, from being further impacted by the ban on trans in the military.
So we told you before that there was a bigger case that we won with Judge, I want to say...
Anna Reyes.
Thank you. Led by lawyers from GLAAD, the Boston legal group, and NCLR, the National Center for Lesbian Rights, Jennifer Levi and Shannon Minter. And they were the lead lawyers in this case, too. These are two more plaintiffs who came along, but they were too late to get into the earlier case. So they had a separate case, and a new judge has said, yes, here's a temporary restraining order against the Defense Department, putting into place its scheme to get rid of all trans soldiers. So here's the thing, though. Let me just double check this. So the Department of Defense, unfazed by this, says, first of all, don't worry, we're going to win this on appeal. They're not going to be able to stop our plan to get rid of all trans soldiers. And when those temporary restraining orders are lifted, because they actually acknowledge they exist, shockingly, we have a scheme for how to get rid of all trans soldiers. We're going to give questionnaires to everybody in the military, and we're going to ask them, have you ever had any confused feelings about your gender? Here's my advice. Say yes. Every one of you, say yes.
That's how it works. If everybody expresses solidarity and says, I am a Jew, when they're persecuting Jews, etc., that kind of stuff.
Well, it's how a lot of people got out of the military for the Vietnam War, because they all went in and said, I'm gay.
They wouldn't let you out for it.
Well,
they used a stop-loss order. You couldn't get out. You had to cut off 2 of your toes. I'm not exaggerating. All right. So, and then, of course, the revenge tour of Trump includes revoking security clearances for Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Tish James and Alvin Bragg in New York, Fiona Hill, all these heroes. Adam Kinzinger said, though, it means literally nothing, and it's funny.
Well, it would be funny if it weren't so tragic, because it is part of it.
And you keep hearing about this, all these people who were put into the prison in, what is it?
Venezuela,
El Salvador. One of them turns out to be a gay Venezuelan barber with no gang ties.
Yeah.
And then the State Department, under little Marco Rubio, who was on that call with all the other idiots who are supposed to be doing our security. Well, the State Department no longer cares about LGBTQ people. They do an annual report detailing human rights abuses around the world. We're out of it now, as are sections on the rights of women, disabled people, indigenous people. This is something the United States of America no longer cares about.
Or government corruption. That used to be a way to get on that list too. But no, you can have a corrupt government internationally, and that will not be noted.
We're becoming one of the most corrupt governments in the world now.
Absolutely.
It's just a kleptocracy.
Well, it's just yet another example of how anyone who isn't a white straight man doesn't count.
Well, wait a minute. The report is going to contain sections on religious freedom, human trafficking, child labor, and protecting refugees.
I take it all back.
Like you care.
I take it all back. Marco Rubio is a hero.
So Trump is trying to dismantle the Department of Education, which is, of course, of great concern to LGBTQ people because they were enforcing some of the anti-discrimination stuff for us. But Tish James, the Attorney General of New York, who has just lost her security clearance and everything, she is suing to stop this.
Well,
among others.
Part of this education thing is Trump going after the governor of Maine, Janet Mills, because he got into a little confrontation with her at a governor's conference reception at the White House. There she is, looking nice and smug. Good for you. And he said she's
looking defiant.
She had to bow down to his rules about trans athletes. And she said, see you in court. And she has not, they've been after her relentlessly ever since. So she's remained defiant. But he says she has to apologize personally to me because this was so offensive to him that anyone would speak up to him. And the University of Maine, which has no trans athletes, has acceded to his demand that they have a policy of no trans athletes.
And then you saw that the University of Pennsylvania, said it will, Trump said he would suspend $175 million of funding there because of their approach to trans athletes and passed
Leah Thomas,
who
graduated 3 years ago.
The university is trying to tell them we're in full compliance with the regulations that apply not only to Penn, but all the NCAA and Ivy League institutions. But Columbia University caved to Trump. He was going to take $400 million away, and they have just acceded to everything. And then he wants even more, from them. I mean, they're putting their departments of Middle Eastern, South Asian, and African studies in receivership at his behest. It is unbelievable.
Well, he's a monster who is getting worse by the day.
And they will not be. He will not be mollified. He'll
Absolutely not.
Just take more.
Yes.
Until they destroy these universities completely. So you know what? dip into your reserve, get rid of the federal money, however many hundreds of millions of dollars it is, and have some integrity. Because otherwise, why exist?
Same with the law firms who are afraid their clients will not sign up with them if they're seen to be in opposition to Trump, because they're afraid of being.
And that's what Paul Weiss did. Look,
Robbie Kaplan got out of there just in time.
He's they're saying they're going to spend $40 million defending his causes. I mean, they're pathetic. And then there's an order now against Jenner and Block, because this is a law firm where Andrew Weissman is. You see him on MSNBC all the time, and he had prosecuted Trump in the past.
So what's going to happen to these law firms? They make good with him now. They say, "Oh, okay, we get it. We'll defend your causes. We'll apologize, whatever." What happens when the next client comes along who wants to sue the government?
Right.
They're
going to be relying on the guy on the corner who does immigration cases.
Yeah. And thank God for them.
So the ACLU says this is nothing but despotic behavior. It's trying to end a free society, which includes journalists, universities, the legal profession, and the courts. But, with Jenner and Block, where Andrew Weissman is, they also defended trans people and asylum seekers. But Perkins Coie, is that how you say it? Perkins Coie, they didn't take this lying down. They're suing in federal court and saying, what you're trying to do to us is unconstitutional. I mean, it's what Hitler did with the courts, basically. He nullified them.
To see his anger and his growing, escalating desire to crush people.
He's got blood in his mouth now, and he tastes it, and he just wants more.
Exactly. And feeding the monster is not the answer.
No, just, Department of Homeland Security has closed its Office for Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, effective last week. It employed about 90 people with a budget of 22 million people. So we don't care about that anymore either.
6 years ago, when Trump was first president, I don't even like saying that, in 2019, he signed on to the aggressive effort to end the AIDS epidemic within a predictable period of time.
Bragged about it.
And especially in vulnerable groups. And new infections actually fell 20% under those policies. But now he's totally out of that, totally reversed it. And he may cancel CDC prevention efforts entirely.
Entirely.
Yeah.
Now, we tell you about how these people get wiped off the websites of government sites. The Defense Department, they deleted a Black Civil War hero, Sergeant William Carney, Medal of Honor winner, who Denzel Washington played in the movie Glory. And then, they finally found out about that and they reversed it. But then they also deleted videos of the Tuskegee Airman, Colonel James Harvey, who's still alive. Now, that's the one for Glory. That's the guy from the Civil War.
Yeah, that's Harvey.
This is Colonel James Harvey. He's 101, a veteran of the Tuskegee Airmen, the Black Flyers who fought in a segregated unit in World War II. And they asked this guy, if Trump has worsened prejudice. He said that if he got to meet him, I'll tell him, you're a racist, and see what he has to say about that. What can they do to me? Just kill me. That's all. So after a uproar, the video was restored. So maybe the answer is stand up to the bully.
Exactly.
That goes for you, law firms and universities.
Pennsylvania.
Oh, and they took out a page about B. Arthur's military service.
Yes.
That ought to get you upset out there, you Golden Girls fans.
Well, they saw it as DEI.
Yeah.
Because how could there be a female military hero? Clearly, it's just whatever.
All right.
In Pennsylvania, the House of Representatives there is honoring Bayard Rustin.
Yep, going to give him a day. That's great. Now, in terms of the resistance, Rise and Resist has been targeted by the Department of Justice and by the FBI, and they're being investigated. They had a press conference where they told you how they're going to stand up to this.
Rise and resist! 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 We are Rise and Resist, and Rise and Resist will not be deterred by government threats. Rise and Resist is a small, entirely volunteer group of activists dedicated to nonviolent, creative protest. We are committed to fighting back against Donald Trump's corrupt agenda. The Trump administration is now threatening us with a federal investigation because of peaceful protests we have organized against Tesla. We are not scared of this threat, and we will not back down. On March 8th, Elon Musk sent out a hostile tweet that blamed Rise and Resist and 4 other groups for the ongoing Tesla protests. On March 10th, after weeks of national protests against the CEO and Doge chief Elon Musk, Tesla's share prices crashed.
On March 11th, Trump said violence against Tesla dealerships will be labeled domestic terrorism. Rise and Resist has never engaged in violence against Tesla dealerships or property. On March 12th, as if on cue, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene sent an official notice to Pam Bondi, Trump's Attorney General, and to Kash Patel, Trump's FBI director, falsely accusing Rise and Resist of acts of vandalism. She maliciously associated us with, quote, domestic political terrorism, unquote, and called for an investigation of Rise and Resist by the FBI and Department of Justice. These ridiculous claims are baseless and without legal merit. They are solely designed to crush dissent. Rise and Resist was founded in late 2016 in recognition of the threat that Trump posed to our democracy. Over thousands of actions in the past 9 years, Rise and Resist has not engaged once in violence or vandalism.
Donald Trump, a would-be dictator, and Elon Musk, an unelected billionaire, are destroying the agencies and government functions on which ordinary, hard-working Americans depend, throwing hundreds of thousands of people out of work, endangering Social Security and veteran services, jeopardizing climate science, and denying health care to vulnerable people. We at Rise and Resist are committed to doing our utmost to stop Trump and Musk's taking a chainsaw to crucial services and jobs, and their attack on the constitutional separation of powers. Accordingly, on March 13th, Rise and Resist protested at the Manhattan Tesla dealership in yet another act of nonviolent resistance.
We at Rise and Resist will continue to assert our First Amendment right to engage in peaceful protest. We will continue to engage in nonviolent activism. We will engage in creative acts of nonviolent civil disobedience in the powerful tradition of the civil rights movement until Elon Musk is fired and Donald Trump and his minions are voted out of office. The opposition to this fascist coup is proliferating in every state across the country. Rise and Resist is proud to be a part of this, a small part of this nationwide mobilization. Join the resistance before it's too late. Rise and resist!
Rise and resist! Rise and resist! Rise and resist!
Rise and resist!
Pam Bondi has assigned an FBI task force to investigate them.
Well, and I worry about agents provocateurs being thrown into these things.
We experienced that in ACT UP
yes.
when FBI people came in to try to disrupt us and cause trouble. But they're right about the resistance growing around the country. I don't see Rachel Maddow very often, but this week somehow I keyed into it. and really extremely powerful video from all over the country every night.
No matter what the big story is, she used to just milk one big story for like a half hour. She starts with demonstrations, little ones, big ones, from all over the country, and that's encouraging. And you can do them too. Of course, there's the big April 5th demonstration coming up, which is nationwide. And in New York, we've got the ACT UP 38th anniversary action on Saturday, March 29th. We're going to meet at the AIDS Memorial at 7th Avenue and 12th Street at noon, and we're going to march to
the Tesla sales showroom
in the meatpacking district.
Yeah. Now, what Rachel is showing are street demonstrations, peaceful street demonstrations with hundreds and thousands of people in the streets with signs and chanting and lining roads.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And also what's going on in these town hall meetings with politicians, whether they show up or not.
They get an empty chair most of the time.
Well, a lot of the time. And one of my favorites was that a Republican representative in California, Kevin Kiley, decided to hold one of these call-in meetings with constituents. 25,000 people tried to call in. People are responding, and this is what has to grow, and it's so heartwarming to see. So Rachel's doing that on a nightly basis, and you can see what's happening in your area, but look around a little locally, and you can create your own events like that. But there are some people who are reacting a little more strongly, and Pam Bondi has charged several anti-Tesla protesters in Oregon, Colorado, and South Carolina with violence because they've torched some Tesla.
Well, they call it domestic terrorism. There is no such crime.
Exactly. And rather than sending people away for like 3 years for arson, they want to send them away for 20 years.
Well,
but meanwhile, they exonerated all the January 6th protesters.
Absolutely. And by the way, it has been suggested, and I don't have the facts behind this, but I remember what happened in the South Bronx in the 70s. Where they torched their own buildings. He may be doing this to himself because he's got an inventory that he can't sell. We don't know that, but think about it.
I don't know that. But if you want to see the torching of buildings in the South Bronx, look at the new edition of the Eyes on the Prize series, episode 1. It's all about that and the rebuilding of the South Bronx by the people there.
We want to talk about our hero of the week. And This is about standing up. South Carolina basketball coach Dawn Staley, she was offered $10 million from Elon Musk because he has such respect for women's sports because his daughter is transgender and he doesn't want them to try. And she said, look, I'm honored by the generosity. I can't accept this. There are far more important causes that need financial attention that need to be done. And if you want to have impact, there are millions of people out there who could benefit from a financial push in healthcare, education, and housing. That's where this money should go. Wow. Rejecting a $10 million donation to a basketball program.
Spend it on something that actually helps people, she said. Well, here's my paranoid feeling. Dawn Staley is someone who has spoken out in support of trans athletes. And when Elon Musk wants to give her $10 million, all I can think is he's trying to get his claws into her so that he can then turn around and start manipulating her out of that support for trans athletes.
Well, I mean, she was actually diplomatic in the way she said this. She could have just said, "You're a monster, and I don't want to touch your
You're
blood.
a racist.
I don't want your blood money."
Yeah.
But
Well,
and by the way,
she did a great thing.
I'm happy to see that Bernie Sanders has adopted my idea that more people run as independents to defeat Republicans in red states. That is what has to happen if we're going to take back power, because the Democrats can't win in a lot of these places.
And his speaking partner on the stump, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is out there giving speeches to these tens of thousands of people and saying, look, don't throw away LGBTQ people in this process. We need them. And it's wrong to condemn them, and it's a losing strategy.
We are the most reliable voting group for Democrats. We're the only group that went up for Harris over Trump from the previous election. Now, Kennedy Center controversy continues. Look at this tone-deaf Facebook post they put up where they say, whatever you're seeing, everyone is welcome at the Kennedy Center. And this was put up on Facebook, and the comments roasting them over this were epic. And then Richard Grinnell, the gay capo who was appointed to head the center, said, Capo, sorry. He said,
you have to know mafia talk.
Let's call the whole thing off. He says Harvey Firestein is not banned, and he can do hairspray or La Cage aux Folles, and we should get together and meet. And Firestein says, although Trump and his army of culturally starved followers would benefit greatly from seeing La Cage aux Folles, Trump's ban on drag is no way La Cage could be produced there. Disney, look, they've retreated somewhat on their, DEI and all those kinds of things, but they had a shareholder resolution from the right wing, which said, you got to stop working with HRC on their corporate equality index. So they had a vote on it. They voted 99% to 1% to keep working with HRC. And I got a response from the group that did it. And they said, but they're all controlled by these, horrible people and who control the votes and things like that. Well, you lost.
Well, then let's take a moment for something more heartwarming. We told you last week about the guy who went to a local meeting in Wisconsin to complain about, to support an anti-trans bill. And when he finally got up after 6 hours of sitting there listening to give his testimony, he apologized and said he changed his mind.
This is Larry Jones, 85 years old.
First of all, I'd like to apologize to you people. I was invited here to give my support for Bill 401. I have very little knowledge of gay people and things like that there. So when I came here, my eyes were open. I was one of the critics that sat on the side and made the decisions there was only two genders. So I got an education that was unbelievable. And I don't know just exactly how to say this, but my perspective for people have changed. So I don't want to take up no more of your time. I'd like to apologize for being here, and I learned a very lot about this group of people.
Fantastic.
Larry should be the Grand Marshal of a Pride Parade.
Pride Parade, and of course, there's your inspiration, Republicans. This is what you can say, my eyes have been opened, my ears have been opened. Because what Trump is doing is wrong. By the way, this is a reminder. Those bills in Wisconsin passed, but Governor Evers will veto them. Yeah. But a reminder about the Wisconsin High Court election that will, decide the balance of power in the court. Extremely important. It'll test the power of Elon Musk, who is now paying people $100 to sign a petition that says, "I want courts that just rule on the law." Take the money and then vote the other way. You got it?
Take the money and write a phony name, because what his effort is really about is collecting names and addresses and coming after you.
The election is April 1st, but early voting is underway. And there are also special elections in Florida for 2 House seats. Now, these are deeply Republican districts. I hope we can at least make progress in cutting. This is like one of them is Matt Gaetz's old district.
We just won a couple of Pennsylvania local elections.
We did. A Democrat held the state House seat, but he won 64 to 35%, a 29% margin. And that keeps a 1-vote margin for the Democrats in the House. And a Democrat narrowly won a special for the state Senate seat, beating an anti-LGBTQ Republican in a district that had not gone Democrat in years. That's encouraging. But they still control the Senate 27-23.
Yeah, but I choose to take these as a harbinger of what can happen in elections.
I know. You told me we were going to win the presidential election, too, because everything was trending that way because of the horrible anti-abortion decisions.
It's true.
I kept up hope. you know?
Well, that's because I was right in 2016 about Trump winning.
I know you were the only
But
one
I
who
missed
was.
this one.
All right.
Let's hopscotch through a few things.
Yes, in St. Louis, after more than 30 years of sponsoring Pride Fest, Anheuser-Busch is not going to sponsor it. It's leaving the group in the lurch.
And Anheuser-Busch, Diageo, Comcast are withdrawing sponsorship of San Francisco Pride, and Meta also.
Comcast, isn't that NBC?
Yes.
The Ninth Circuit, here's a terrible decision. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that Idaho can ban transgender students from using bathrooms that align with their gender identity, concerned about the privacy of cisgender students.
And that's the Ninth Circuit, which we have counted on for decades.
And it goes against, even the Supreme Court, said in the Gavin, what's his name?
Newsom?
No.
Oh, Grimm.
Gavin Grimm in Virginia, they upheld his right to use the restrooms.
They've conflated restrooms and locker rooms.
Yeah.
And I would submit you can have a discussion about locker rooms and what's appropriate. But bathrooms, for God's sake, that doesn't need any restrictions. And so they have just used the locker rooms as an excuse to make the restrooms off limits too. In Pennsylvania, a good decision, the Supreme Court has created something called interest-based parentage.
Yes.
You don't need a biological relation or written contracts to be a parent, and that's very good for our families.
In New York State, they upheld the ACLU's settlement, the NYCLU's settlement about police protests. So the police are going to have to take
police at protests.
At protests can no longer flood the place with officers, and
We'll see what happens on Saturday.
Yeah.
In Waco, Texas, a 47-year-old man was arrested for shooting at a relative who came out to him.
Now, the LGBTQ students at Yeshiva University, we've told you about this. They were banned from having an LGBTQ group. And then they kept winning in court over this. Mm-hmm. And they finally settled. And they're now going to have a group called Hareni. And the school says it's going to operate in accordance with the approved guidelines of the senior rabbis. So I tried to ask them what this meant, the gays, and they didn't call me back.
Well, they have referred in some interviews to even if we have to compromise, it's okay. So we really want to know what compromises have you agreed to? Yeah.
Call me back.
They claim that they've got the same rights as other clubs, and they have in writing now that they have access to all the school facilities.
And also on the church state front, 6 yeshivas in New York City are told you can't be considered schools if you don't teach kids.
and they said the hell with you.
And well, they do say the hell with. Well, we'll see if that holds up.
Well, they're simply going to run their own operations, and they won't get state sanction as schools.
Yeah, but
the politicians will lose all the votes.
You can't treat kids this way. I mean, it's against the law.
Well, that was the argument. The point is they should have to go to a public school to get the
lawsuits brought by Jewish parents, by the way.
Yeah.
All right.
In
Iowa, a federal judge blocked on Tuesday the portion of the Republican-backed law that bans libraries in public schools from stocking books that describe sex acts.
In Kentucky, the legislature overrode the governor's executive order. They have reinstated conversion therapy, and they have outlawed Medicaid funds for trans health care.
In Minnesota, follow up on this story, that virulently anti-LGBTQ state legislator, Republican, who was caught in a sting operation, soliciting a minor for prostitution. He has stepped down. Governor Walz has to call a special election about that. But until then, Senate Democrats will have a 2-seat majority.
In Texas, they have a record 200 anti-LGBTQ bills proposed for this session of the legislature. And Governor Abbott, what a guy. He told the state that we have to watch out for these litter boxes in schools because the furries are coming to your school to use litter boxes.
It's insane. So they want to ban that, and they want to ban all kinds of books, including classic literature like The Odyssey, Catcher in the Rye, Brave New World, lest we forget, the Bible contains a lot of the things that they want to ban.
Well, they've tried to ban that some places. So Equality Texas held a rally at the state capitol in Austin, and here is a local news report on that.
The Texas State Capitol today, the All In for Equality Coalition and a crowd of supporters rallied against legislation filed this session that they say would harm thousands of people in the LGBTQ plus community. KVU's Jessica Cha was at the rally today, spoke with organizers about what they're fighting for. Good afternoon, Jessica.
Good afternoon, Brian. Yes, as the rally happened outside of the Capitol today, inside, the Senate Committee on State Affairs met at the Capitol to talk about a bill that would allow protections for school employees that refer to students by their biological sex without repercussions. And LGBTQ advocates that I spoke to today say that they're just fighting for the right to exist. Gathered at the steps of the Capitol are folks who identify as queer or their allies too, but they're also Texans too.
There is no Attorney General's opinion or piece of legislation or executive order that will force us to be anything other than our true, authentic selves.
But advocates say attacks against that have made that difficult. Last legislative session, Brad Pritchett, interim CEO of Equality Texas, says 140 anti-LGBTQ bills were filed. This year, there are more than 200.
We're seeing this uptick in attacks and new and terrible legislation that's designed to really eliminate people's ability to exist in public spaces.
Bills have ranged from restricting a transgender person's access to bathrooms to being unable to update legal documentation based on someone's gender identity. And people like Faith Northern see that can really affect people.
Hurts your self-confidence, your self-esteem as a human, but it also is scary. It feels really scary to be out in the world, to want to hold hands with my partner.
Northern, a therapist with queer clientele and being queer herself, says that makes them want to fight for their rights even more.
We're never going to go away. And so we need to be seen in spaces that are important, that are there for people to feel cared, seen, loved, and appreciated.
Fighting for rights that not everyone may need.
If it doesn't hurt anybody else, why the hell are you involved?
But could be the difference between life or death for another.
We demand recognition, respect, and protection under the law, and we will not stop fighting until we get it.
Because they say they're Texans too.
For that, yes.
Now
that's enough. That's terrific. Terrific what they're doing. And at Texas A&M, a judge said that the popular Draggieland performance can go on at the university, and says that banning it is a violation of the First Amendment.
In Ypsilanti, Michigan, they have found a trans woman, Amira O'Neill, age 44, was stabbed dead in July 2023. Ronnie Magbray, 28, is now on trial for murder. O'Neill had one son, worked at Panera Bread, lived in communes, learned Arabic, definitely a valued member of the community.
And we told you about the murder of Rebecca Marodi, the California fire captain out there in San Diego, killed by her wife while they caught the wife in Mexico.
Yeah. And a couple of people to mourn also. Tom Steele died at 72. He was a co-founder and editor of Christopher Street magazine, which was a seminal publication in New York City 50 years ago.
And they also did the New York Native and other magazines.
Theater Week, Opera Monthly.
He was the author of 30 books, including 7 cookbooks. I knew Tom.
And won an award from the Publishing Triangle, which is an LGBTQ publishing organization, in 2016 for his invaluable contribution to our community and culture.
And Max Frankel has died. He was the executive editor of the New York Times starting in 1987, who finally lifted the ban on the use of the word gay for us. He was much more sympathetic than the horrible guy preceding him, Abe Rosenthal, who helped cause the AIDS crisis. But he was that was history at the Times.
Some dates to note coming up. This weekend on Sunday, after the big ACT UP demonstration on Saturday, there are 2 memorial services at the center, 1 p.m. for Troy Masters.
I'll be there for that.
Publisher of many LGBTQ publications, newspapers, magazines. And then at 4:30 for Nanette Kazaoka, longtime, really important ACT UP member, 4:30 at the center.
And mark your calendar for April 12th. It's going to finally be a celebration of the life of Dr. Joe Sonneman, a pioneering AIDS doctor. I'll certainly be there for that. That's going to be at the Judson Church. And we will include this information in our email. Go to gayusatv.org, and we will tell you all about these things.
And this coming Monday, March 31st, is the Trans Day of Visibility, as opposed to the Trans Day of Remembrance. And there are a lot of events around the country, some of them here in New York on Friday at the center and elsewhere, and on Monday in Brooklyn.
I will link to an article in our email about what's happening in New York. You'll have to Google it to find out what's happening in your neck of the
Visibility.
woods. All right, international news. Well, Hungarian LGBTQ activists say they're going to defy the ban on pride marches on June 28th. Hungary, by the way, allows neo-Nazi marches.
The World Athletics Organization Track and Field Division has announced mandatory DNA sex testing for all female track and field contestants. Trans women are now banned from any participation in track and field events, and now they're going after intersex people and people with unusual chromosome.
Can't we all get, well, they always did that.
Yeah.
Back in the 60s even.
Well, they claim they're protecting the integrity of women's sports.
Okay.
There's got to be a better way.
Put up this poster, this beware poster. The African Human Rights Coalition is calling on LGBTQ Africans and LGBTQI people worldwide to refrain from attending World Pride in the United States of America this May and June, because the event is being held in the USA, which is now governed by an antagonistic fascist regime, which presents distinct dangers to foreign LGBTQI attendees. It's very blunt language, but that's what we're living through. They say the USA is no longer a free democratic country that World Pride signed up for. And that's the truth.
It is the truth, and it's going to be, I'm sure that the World Pride people are just freaking out at what they're going to do in June.
6 European nations have issued travel warnings about, especially to transgender people. And we're talking about Germany, Finland, United Kingdom, Denmark, the Netherlands, and France. They're saying traveling to the United States is dangerous.
And the new president of the International Olympic Committee, Kirsty Coventry, a swimmer from Zimbabwe, the only female candidate, and a big surprise when she was elected. A lot of the men were surprised. But she says, we'll work with Trump on transgender issues. We will have a task force to study the issue. We're interested in the protection of the female category. It's always about protection. It's very paternalistic. Trump, meanwhile, has banned trans athletes from the U.S. and bars them because they misrepresent their identity. It's all about him calling trans people liars.
All right.
Turkey, the LGBT young are on the frontiers of the protests going on there, which are quite dangerous. And a new report says homophobic African countries like Kenya and Uganda are losing billions in their GDP because of their homophobia.
Right. All right. Health news, AIDS news. The Trump administration, we'd be talking about this for a half hour if we had time. They're canceling at least 68 grants focused on LGBTQ health questions.
$40 million.
It is just outrageous. I mean, the HHS spokesperson said, we're dedicated to restoring our agencies to their tradition of upholding gold standard evidence-based science. They said the research that we're canceling is unscientific and does nothing to enhance the health of many Americans.
Once again, we're narrowing the field of who's a real human being.
Right.
And Secretary of State Marco Rubio has canceled 83% of USAID programs around the world and named two stooges who were responsible for destroying AID to run it.
Now, as we tape, they said they're going to continue some grants for HIV meds and TB and food aid around the world. But Trump is also ending vaccine funds for poor countries. And of the 75 million children who do not receive these vaccines over 5 years, 1.2 million will die. Blood is on your hands.
Every day. So Trump has appointed a new head of the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, Susan Monarez.
Yes.
She's been there and elsewhere for many, many years. She's a dedicated health professional. But if you think anybody he appoints is going to work in any way against him, you are.
Well, she was the acting director for the time being, and she let them take down all the LGBTQ and transgender stuff.
Don't hold your breath on her.
Although she's considered a lot better than the guy that got, scotched by the Congress.
I'm a little interested in the hearing in the Boston District Court today on the lawsuit challenging Trump's male-female passports only.
Yeah.
If we win that case, that is going to have huge effects.
Great.
If he's not allowed to define people.
And of
as
course,
male or
RFK
female.
wants to let bird flu rip through the chicken farms. At the time, it is now spreading into mammals. By the way, we're not furries, but we are mammals.
Let the chickens loose. That's his.
But
his
they have
slogan.
zero interest in vaccines anymore. And the global measles laboratory is under severe threat of collapse.
Oh, my God.
And
it just gets worse and worse.
All right.
So New York City, and I presume other cities, have announced their theme for Pride this year. Rise up, pride and protest. And my answer is I'll believe it when I see it.
We will have a protest that day with in the Queer Liberation March in New York, at least, and other cities do things like this.
We'd be happy to join with you if you stopped regretting all the corporations that have dropped their sponsorships and you turned it into a real free-for-all march as it used to be and protest. Let's all, it says, together we march on. Fine, let's do that.
Right. No floats, no corporations.
All right.
All right.
Entertainment news.
Yeah.
Should we be entertaining for a few minutes?
Now talk about Lucy and Julian.
Lucy Dacus and Julian Baker are two members of the very popular band Boy Genius, and they have been rumored to be a couple for a long time, and they've finally come out about it. There they are celebrating. They're very young and hip and popular, and this is a great role model for young lesbians.
I started to watch this new comedy on Netflix series, The Residents, it's a White House murder mystery with 157 suspects, and the president is gay. That's Paul Fitzgerald on the left, and the first gentleman is Barrett Foa, who's a very prominent out gay actor on Broadway.
You don't have a picture of Uzo Aduba.
We don't. Uzo Aduba is the obsessive detective. She's very funny.
Yeah.
Who runs in there and starts
great in everything.
questioning everybody.
Everything she's in, she's great. I have no information about her sexual orientation, and I'm not implying anything, but I just like her a lot.
Janice Ian.
Janice Ian, another person to like a lot. So there's been this documentary about Janice Ian that's been making the rounds of the film festivals very successfully, and it's playing starting now in New York at the IFC Center on 6th Avenue. Preview show screening on Thursday night. We're taping on Wednesday, and then continuing. And on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, Janice Ian herself will be at the, mid-evening screening to appear. And
Janice Ian, the first musical guest on Saturday night show.
She's terrific. There's a trailer for the film. Let's take a look at that.
And the winner is at 17, Janice Ian.
When I started out, I wanted to be really famous. So naive.
What do you consider yourself, Jan?
Just a singer.
Of any particular notoriety?
Infamously, yes.
You're welcome.
please. Janice. Janice standing there with just an acoustic guitar. It was just mesmerizing. This little woman wrote giant works of art.
Very strong, emphatic social commentary.
This is perhaps one of the most censored, I think, of all records. What I was doing was right. It had the power to make people stand up, and that's why it scared them. You have this young girl taking on interracial relationships.
The record company was afraid of it. Radio stations were afraid of playing it. All the odds were stacked against them.
Bernstein said, let's have her on the show we're doing about pop music.
Listen hard to society's child.
That was an embrace of God.
It just took off, and then she took off.
I learned the truth at 17.
How do you react to the music business?
You have to sacrifice a certain part of yourself for a time.
She was not able to cope with daily reality.
Those of us who knew the pain
I had no money. I had nowhere to live.
of Valentines that never came.
In those years, it was not cool to be out of the closet.
And those whose names were never called.
We were writing every day, and of course, we fell in love. I know what it is to feel powerless. I know what it is to feel trapped. And so I can use those feelings as part of being truthful.
There's a creativity there. There's a power there.
Her legacy is not just as a songwriter, but it's as an LGBTQ icon.
I can't say the rest is history, but history was being made.
Child prodigies have complications.
I don't think that she intended to become a symbol of social change. She was writing about what she knew.
She's true to her music and true to herself. Music is about telling stories. This is mine.
Thank you. It's been a long time.
You really can't overestimate the importance of Janice Ian, and a lot of the other people in that trailer in the social movements of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. And we need a lot more of that today. All communities, but certainly the entertainment community needs to stand up in these times.
Hear, hear. Speaking of entertainment, I saw Operation Mincemeat on Broadway. This had been a huge hit in London, where it won the Olivier Award for Best Musical. It's based on the true story of how British intelligence in World War II used a corpse to deceive Hitler about where the Allies would invade Italy in 1943. The story was made into a very starry Netflix film in 2012.
I remember.
But this is a zany musical comedy by and starring members of a comedy troupe called Spit Lip. 5 people who play about 80 characters with a lot of gender swapping. One actor more impressive than the next. The women are great at showing how awful the men can be. And there are some deeply moving moments amid the hilarity, especially a love song sung by Zach Malone as Hester. I can't recommend it enough. It's at the John Golden Theater, and they've already extended it through February 15th.
Wasn't there an earlier movie? Why am I like a black and white
there was.
British movie or something?
Yes, there was.
It's a great story. And then there's
true story.
Yeah, the what's the one, the American comedy where they were dragging some dead guy around.
Oh,
I never saw it.
Weekend at Bernie's.
That's it. Thank you.
And it's like
Similar.
that.
Yeah.
By the way, if you're headed for London, I'm not going until the summer, but Billy Porter's making his UK directorial debut in a play called This Bitter Earth, starring Omari Douglas and Alexander Lincoln. It's going to be there June through July.
All right, we have 20 seconds to fill.
Well, and the Kiln Theater over there is doing a play about Brian Epstein, and they're also doing the Ministry of Lesbian Affairs.
Whoa, okay. Meanwhile, the mystery of the Trump administration continues. Get out in the streets.
Yes.
Do something.
We'll be there. We'll see you
Saturday.